She slapped the devil, and he smiled. When Mara Cole's hand connected with Adrian Moretti's face in front of his entire crew, the room went silent. Everyone knew what came next. Blood, screams, disappearance. But Adrian just smiled, a cold, curious thing that promised something far worse than death. What happens when you strike the most dangerous man in the city and he decides you're worth keeping alive? This is their story. A collision of defiance and power that neither of them will survive unchanged. Drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this story travels. And if you want to know what happens next, hit that like button and stay until the end. The fluorescent lights of Russo's diner buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over the cracked vinyl booths and sticky linoleum floors. It was 3 a.m., that dead hour, when the city exhaled its worst, when the predators came out to feed and the desperate came out to hide. Mara Cole wiped down the same section of counter for the third time, her movements mechanical, her mind elsewhere. The coffee pot hissed behind her, filling the empty diner with the smell of burnt grounds and broken dreams. She'd been working double shifts for 2 weeks straight, and exhaustion had settled into her bones like frost. But tonight, exhaustion was the least of her worries. Elena Voss sat in the corner booth, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Mara's best friend, her sister in everything but blood, looked like she was falling apart from the inside out. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled every time she tried to lift the cup to her lips. Mara had known Elena since they were kids in the foster system, two broken girls who'd found family in each other when the world offered nothing but cruelty. They'd survived together, built lives from nothing, promised each other they'd never end up like the addicts and criminals who populated their neighborhood. But promises were fragile things in this city. Mara. Elena's voice cracked across the empty diner. He's coming. Mara's hand stilled on the counter. Who? But she already knew. She'd known for weeks, ever since Elena had come to her apartment with bruises on her wrists and terror in her eyes, confessing what she'd done. The gambling debt, the loan shark, the impossible interest rates that turned $5,000 into $50,000 in a matter of months. Adrian Moretti, Elena whispered, and the name fell like a curse. Everyone in the city knew that name. Adrian Moretti, crime lord, ghost, monster, the man who controlled half the illegal operations in the metro area, who could make people disappear with a phone call, who'd built an empire on blood and fear. And Elena owed him money she could never repay. How long? Mara asked, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. He texted 10 minutes ago. Said he'd be here by 3:15. Elena checked her phone with shaking hands. Mara, I don't have the money. I don't have anything. He's going to... Stop. Mara moved around the counter, sliding into the booth across from her friend. She took Elena's cold hands in hers, squeezing hard. Listen to me. We'll figure this out. We always do. Elena laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Figure this out? This isn't a missed rent payment or a bounced check. This is Adrian fucking Moretti. People who can't pay him back don't just lose their money. They lose everything. Then we run. Right now. We grab your stuff, get in my car, and we drive until... Until what? Elena pulled her hands away. Until he finds us? Because he will, Mara. You don't run from men like him. You don't hide. He owns this city. He owns everything. The door chimed. Both women froze. 3 men walked into the diner, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The first 2 were muscle, broad-shouldered, dead-eyed, the kind of men who'd seen violence so often it no longer registered as anything special. They moved like soldiers, flanking the third man, their hands resting casually near their waistbands where Mara knew they carried guns. But it was the third man who made Mara's breath catch. Adrian Moretti. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have belonged to a classical statue, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Mara made in 6 months, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question his own power. He was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, elegant, deadly, designed to cut. His gaze swept the diner, cataloging everything in seconds, before settling on Elena's booth. A small smile curved his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Elena Voss. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an accent Mara couldn't place. You're a difficult woman to pin down. Elena stood on trembling legs. Mr. Moretti, I can explain. Can you? He moved toward the booth with unhurried grace, his guards remaining by the door. Because I've been very curious to hear your explanation. 3 months past due, multiple missed meetings, and according to my associates, you've been avoiding their calls. I needed more time. Time. Adrian tilted his head, studying her like a scientist examining an insect. Time is a luxury, Miss Voss, and luxuries must be purchased. You purchased time with my money, and now the bill has come due. Mara stood, positioning herself between Adrian and Elena. She's working on it. She just needs... And who are you? Adrian's attention shifted to Mara, and the weight of his gaze was like physical pressure against her skin. Her friend. Her friend. He repeated the words as if testing their flavor. How touching. Tell me, friend, do you have $53,000? The number hit like a punch. Mara had known the debt was bad, but this... 53? Ina's voice broke. But I borrowed 3 months ago. With interest compounding weekly at 15%. Adrian's tone remained pleasant, conversational, as if discussing the weather. It's all in the contract you signed. Did you not read the contract, Miss Voss? I didn't. I thought... You thought I was running a charity? For the first time, something cold flashed in Adrian's eyes. You thought you could borrow money from me, waste it on whatever desperate gamble led you to my door, and then simply, what? Apologize? Cry? Plead for mercy? He took a step closer, and Elena shrank back against the booth. I'm not in the mercy business, Miss Voss. I'm in the business of teaching lessons, and you're about to learn a very important one about honoring your debts. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd grown up in rough neighborhoods, knew dangerous men, had learned to read violence before it happened. And every instinct she had was screaming at her that Adrian Moretti was seconds away from doing something terrible. Please, Elena whispered, I'll pay you back. I swear, just give me more time. Time? Adrian's smile turned cruel. No, but I'll give you a choice. You can work off your debt in one of my establishments. I have several that are always looking for fresh talent. The terms would be standard, room and board provided, wages applied directly to your debt. At your earning potential, you'd be free in, 7 to 10 years. The implications of his words hit like ice water. Mara knew exactly what kind of establishments he meant. Or, Adrian continued, you can refuse and I'll consider your debt in default, which means I collect your assets, your apartment, your car, your personal possessions, and then I collect what remains. What remains? Mara asked, though she didn't want to know the answer. Adrian's eyes shifted to her, and she saw nothing human in them. Whatever I decide has value. Elena was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Please, please, I'm sorry. I'll do whatever you want. Stop. The word came out harder than Mara intended. She stepped forward, putting herself fully between Adrian and Elena. This is insane. She made a mistake, borrowed money she couldn't repay. That doesn't give you the right to... The right? Adrian's eyebrows rose. I have every right. She signed a contract. She agreed to the terms. And now she pays the price of her choices. She's not property. No. Adrian's voice dropped to something quiet and infinitely more dangerous. But her debt is, and debts can be bought, sold, and collected in whatever manner I see fit. Something in Mara snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was rage at a lifetime of watching powerful men crush everyone beneath them. Maybe it was the simple, desperate need to protect the only family she had left. Or maybe she was just tired of being afraid. Her hand moved before her brain caught up, swinging in a wide arc that connected with Adrian Moretti's face with a sharp crack that echoed through the diner like a gunshot. The world stopped. Adrian's head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. The two guards at the door moved instantly, hands going for their weapons, but Adrian raised one hand in a gesture that froze them mid-motion. Silence crashed down like a tidal wave. Mara's hand throbbed. Her heart thundered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. And slowly, so slowly, Adrian turned his head back to face her. A red mark bloomed across his cheek. His dark eyes were wide with what looked like shock. No one moved. No one breathed. Mara waited for the gunshot, the knife, the hands around her throat. She waited for death because she'd just committed the kind of mistake people didn't survive. But Adrian didn't order his men to shoot her. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just stared. And then, impossibly, he smiled. Not the cold, cruel smile from before. This was something different, something curious and almost delighted, like a child discovering a new toy. "Well," he said softly. "That was unexpected." Mara's voice came out steady despite the terror flooding her veins. "Stay away from her." Adrian touched his cheek where she'd struck him, his fingers coming away clean. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Yeah, I slapped you, and I'll do it again if you don't leave Elena alone." Behind her, Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. "Mara, oh God, Mara, what did you—" "Be quiet, Miss Voss," Adrian said without taking his eyes off Mara. He moved closer, invading her personal space, studying her face with the intensity of a predator examining prey. "What's your name?" Mara lifted her chin. "Why? So you know what to put on my headstone?" "Your name," he repeated, and there was steel beneath the silk of his voice. "Mara Cole. Mara Cole." He said it slowly, like memorizing it. "Do you know who I am?" "A loan shark with delusions of grandeur." One of the guards made a choked sound. Adrian's smile widened. "Interesting. Most people who know my name are too terrified to speak, let alone strike me." He circled her slowly, and Mara forced herself to remain still, to not show weakness. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the stupidest. I haven't decided which yet. Does it matter? Perhaps not. Either way, you've created a problem for me." He completed his circle, standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark. "I can't allow someone to assault me and walk away unpunished. It sets a bad precedent. My reputation is built on fear and respect, and you've just challenged both." Mara's throat tightened. "So kill me, but let Elena go." "Kill you?" Adrian laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. "Oh, Mara Cole, death is easy. Death is boring. And you—" He reached out, tilting her chin up with one finger, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're anything but boring." His touch was gentle, almost tender, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian said, his voice dropping to something intimate and deadly. "Elena's debt is forgiven." Elena gasped. "What?" "Effective immediately. You owe me nothing. You're free to go." He still hadn't looked away from Mara. "Consider it a gift." "A gift?" Mara's voice shook. "Nothing you do is a gift." "True. There's always a price." His smile turned predatory. "Elena's debt is transferred. To you." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? You want to protect your friend so badly. Fine. Her debt becomes yours. $53,000 plus accrued interest to be paid in full within, let's say, 6 months. That seems fair." "I don't have that kind of money." "No, you don't." Adrian released her chin, stepping back. "Which means you'll work it off. But not in one of my usual establishments. You're far too interesting for that." "I won't." "You will. Because if you refuse, Elena's debt reinstates. And this time, I won't be so generous with the terms." His eyes went cold. "I'll collect from her in ways that will make my previous offer seem merciful. Do you understand me?" Mara understood. She understood perfectly. She'd traded herself for Elena's freedom, and now she belonged to Adrian Moretti. "Fine," she whispered. "I'll work off the debt." "Excellent." Adrian gestured to one of his guards. "Marcus will give you the details. You start tomorrow." "Tomorrow? I have a job." "Not anymore. You work for me now. Exclusively." He turned toward the door, his guards falling into step beside him. "Oh, and Mara?" She looked up, meeting his dark eyes. "Don't try to run. I always find what belongs to me. And now—" His smile was a promise and a threat. "You belong to me." Then he was gone, the door chiming cheerfully behind him as if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Mara stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The guard, Marcus, approached, holding out a business card. "Boss wants you at this address tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp," he said, his voice gruff. "Don't be late. He doesn't like to wait." Then he left too, leaving Mara and Elena alone in the fluorescent-lit diner. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Elena was on her feet, grabbing Mara's shoulders.
"What did you do? Oh God, Mara, what did you do? I saved you."
Mara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Saved me? You just sold yourself to Adrian Moretti. Do you have any idea what he's going to—" "I know exactly what I did, Elena." Mara pulled away, her legs suddenly weak. She sank into the booth, staring at the business card in her hand. An address in the wealthy district across town. Embossed lettering, no name. Elena collapsed beside her, tears streaming down her face. "This is my fault. I never should have—" "Stop. It's done." Mara's hand still throbbed from the slap. She could still feel the heat of Adrian's skin, still see the shock in his eyes before it transformed into something else. Something that terrified her more than rage would have. Interest. "I'll find a way to fix this," Elena said desperately. "I'll go to the police and tell them what? That a crime lord loaned you money and you can't pay it back? They won't help. They can't." Mara closed her eyes. "No one can." "Then run. Disappear. I'll help you. He'll find me. You heard him." Mara opened her eyes, studying the card. "And if I run, he'll come for you. I won't let that happen. So you're just going to, what? Work for him? Do whatever he wants? For 6 months, I work off the debt, and then I'm free. We both are." Mara tried to sound confident, but the words felt hollow. She'd seen the way Adrian looked at her, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve, a challenge he wanted to break. 6 months working for a man like that? She might not survive. But the alternative was letting Elena suffer, and that wasn't an option. It had never been an option. "I'm so sorry," Elena whispered, breaking down completely. "I'm so sorry." Mara pulled her friend close, holding her while she sobbed, and tried not to think about tomorrow morning. Tried not to think about walking into Adrian Moretti's world with no idea what waited for her there. Tried not to think about the smile on his face when she'd slapped him, like she'd just done exactly what he'd hoped she would. The apartment was dark when Mara finally got home, but she couldn't sleep. She sat on her worn couch staring at the business card, trying to plan for something that couldn't be planned for. What did Adrian Moretti want with her? He could have killed her, should have killed her. Men like him didn't tolerate disrespect, didn't allow challenges to their authority. But instead of violence, he'd shown curiosity, like she was a new variable in an equation he'd already solved 1,000 times. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello, Mara." Adrian's voice was silk and steel. "I wanted to make sure you hadn't done anything foolish, like running." "How did you get my number?" "I get everything I want. You'll learn that soon enough." She could hear the smile in his voice. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." "What exactly will I be doing?" "Working off your debt." "Doing what?" A pause. "We'll discuss it tomorrow. For now, get some sleep. You're going to need your strength." The line went dead. Mara set the phone down with shaking hands. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something through the window, but she did none of those things. Instead, she went to her bedroom and set her alarm for 6 a.m., giving herself plenty of time to prepare for whatever fresh hell awaited her. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling through her mind. Adrian Moretti had smiled when she slapped him. Men like him didn't smile at defiance. They crushed it. Unless they saw something in it, something useful, something valuable, something they wanted, and that terrified her more than any threat could have. Morning came too quickly. Mara dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a simple black sweater. Nothing fancy, but clean and professional. She had no idea what to expect, but she'd learned long ago that appearances mattered. First impressions could mean the difference between respect and contempt. Though in Adrian Moretti's case, she'd already made her first impression, with her hand across his face. The address led her to a gated estate in the hills overlooking the city. As her old Honda approached the security checkpoint, Mara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was it. Last chance to turn back, to run, to... The gate opened. She drove through. The estate sprawled across several acres, all manicured lawns and elegant architecture. The main house looked like something from a European magazine, stone and glass, modern but classic. The kind of place that whispered of old money and older power. A man in a suit, not Marcus, someone new, waited at the front entrance. He opened her car door with professional courtesy. "Miss Cole, Mr. Moretti is expecting you. This way, please." Mara followed him through marble hallways decorated with art that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Everything was pristine, perfect, controlled, like the man who owned it. They stopped at a heavy wooden door. The man knocked once, then opened it. "Miss Cole, sir." "Thank you, James." Adrian Moretti sat behind a massive desk, papers spread before him, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up as Mara entered, and something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. "Punctual. Good." He removed his glasses, folding them carefully. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Mara sat in the chair across from his desk, meeting his eyes with as much confidence as she could muster. She wouldn't show fear, wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "Coffee?" he asked. "No, thank you." "Suit yourself." He poured himself a cup from a silver service, taking his time, making her wait. When he finally spoke again, his tone was businesslike. "Your debt stands at $53,000. At the wage I'm prepared to offer, it would take approximately 26 months to pay off." "You said 6 months." "I lied. I do that." His smile was unapologetic. "However, I'm willing to accelerate the timeline if you prove useful." "Useful how?" "I need someone who can move in certain circles. Someone clean, no criminal record, no obvious connections to my organization." His eyes studied her with uncomfortable intensity. "Someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to slap me in front of my men." "So you want me to what? Be a courier? A mule?" "Nothing so pedestrian. I want you to be my assistant." Mara blinked. "Your what?" "My assistant. You'll live here on the estate. You'll accompany me to meetings, take notes, manage my schedule, handle correspondence. To the outside world, you'll appear to be a legitimate employee of my legitimate businesses." "And behind closed doors?" "Behind closed doors, you'll see everything, learn everything, understand how my world works." He leaned forward. "And in exchange, your debt reduces by $10,000 per month. 6 months, and you're free." It was too good to be true, which meant it wasn't true. "What's the catch?" "The catch," Adrian said softly, "is that you'll be mine. Completely. You'll live where I tell you to live, go where I tell you to go, do what I tell you to do. No questions, no negotiations, no defiance." "I thought you liked defiance." His smile was dangerous. "In moderation, and only when I allow it. And if I refuse? Then the original terms stand. 26 months of labor. I have several businesses that could use someone with your spirit." The way he said it made it clear exactly what kind of businesses he meant. Mara's stomach turned. But she'd already made her choice, hadn't she? The moment she'd stepped between Adrian and Elena, she'd committed herself to this path. "Fine. I'll be your assistant." "Excellent." Adrian stood, moving around the desk. "A few ground rules. First, everything you see and hear is confidential. You speak of my business to no one. Not Elena, not anyone. Understood?" "Yes." "Second, you go nowhere alone. When you leave the estate, you'll have security with you, for your protection. Or to make sure I don't run. Both." He didn't bother denying it. "Third, you're to be available at all hours. I work irregular schedules, and I expect the same dedication from my people." "Fine." "And fourth," he stopped in front of her chair, looking down at her. "You will show me respect. I allowed your little display last night because it amused me. But that grace period has ended. From now on, you address me as Mr. Moretti or Sir. You follow my instructions without argument, and you remember that I own you." Mara's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at her to tell him to go to hell, to walk out, to fight. But Elena's tear-stained face flashed through her mind. "Yes, sir," she forced out. Satisfaction gleamed in Adrian's eyes. "Good. James will show you to your quarters. Unpack and settle in. We have a meeting at noon, and I expect you ready and presentable." "What kind of meeting?" The kind where you'll learn very quickly what it means to work for me." He returned to his desk, dismissing her with a gesture. "Oh, and Mara?" She stopped at the door, looking back. "Welcome to my world. Try not to drown." Her quarters turned out to be a suite larger than her entire apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, all decorated in shades of cream and gold. A wardrobe stood open, revealing clothes in her size. Professional attire, casual wear, even evening gowns. He'd planned this, known she'd agree, prepared everything in advance. The realization sent ice through her veins. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. A woman entered, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. "Miss Cole? I'm Margaret, the head of household staff. Mr. Moretti asked me to help you prepare for this afternoon's meeting." "Prepare how?" Margaret's expression softened slightly. "You'll understand soon enough. For now, let's start with your wardrobe. The gray suit, I think. Professional, but not severe." An hour later, Mara barely recognized herself in the mirror. The suit fit perfectly, tailored to her body. Margaret had styled her hair into a sleek professional knot and showed her how to apply minimal but effective makeup. She looked like she belonged in Adrian's world. The thought made her sick. "One more thing," Margaret said, producing a small box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a single diamond pendant. "Mr. Moretti requested you wear this." "It's too much." "It's not a gift. It's a uniform." Margaret's tone was gentle but firm. "Everything you see in this room, everything you wear, everything you use, it all belongs to Mr. Moretti, including, for the next 6 months, you." The words should have felt like a cage closing. Instead, they felt like a promise. The meeting took place in a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown. Adrian arrived exactly on time, with Mara at his side and Marcus trailing behind as security. 3 men waited at the table, older, wealthy, with the kind of faces that appeared in newspaper business sections. They stood as Adrian approached, shaking his hand with respect that bordered on fear. "Gentlemen," Adrian said smoothly, "thank you for making time. This is Miss Cole, my new executive assistant. She'll be sitting in on all my meetings moving forward." The men's eyes swept over Mara with varying degrees of curiosity and speculation. She kept her expression neutral, professional, exactly as Margaret had coached her. "Shall we?" Adrian gestured to the table. What followed was 2 hours of the most civilized, polite discussion of criminal activity Mara had ever witnessed. Shipping schedules, distribution networks, territory agreements, money laundering through legitimate businesses. They never used explicit terms. Everything was coded, veiled in business speak. But Mara understood. She was watching Adrian Moretti conduct his empire like a CEO conducting a board meeting. And the most terrifying part? He was brilliant at it. He negotiated with surgical precision, identifying weaknesses, exploiting leverage, offering just enough to make deals while giving up nothing he couldn't afford to lose. The other men respected him, feared him, needed him. He controlled them completely while making them think they had a choice. Throughout it all, Adrian occasionally glanced at Mara, checking her reactions, gauging her responses, testing her. She kept her face blank, her posture professional, taking notes when directed, playing her role. As the meeting concluded and the men departed with handshakes and promises, Adrian turned to her. Well, what? Your thoughts. You're dismissed for the day, but tomorrow morning, I expect a full analysis of everything you observed. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I want to know what you saw." Mara stared at him. "You want me to analyze your business meeting? I want to know if you were paying attention, if you understood, if you're as intelligent as I suspect you are." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "Because if you're just going to be a decorative note-taker, this arrangement won't work. I need someone who can think." "Why me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You could have anyone. Someone with actual experience, actual training. Why force me into this?" Adrian studied her for a long moment. "Do you know what I saw when you slapped me? Disrespect? Fire." His voice dropped to something intimate and dangerous. "I saw someone who cared enough about another person to risk everything. Someone with loyalty, courage, and a spine most people lost long ago. Those qualities are rare, Mara, and in my world, rarity equals value." He moved closer and she forced herself not to retreat. You think I'm a monster, he continued, and you're right. But monsters understand other predators. And last night, when you stood between me and Elena, when you struck me, his smile was almost admiring. I saw a predator in civilian clothing, someone who could survive in my world if properly directed. I'm nothing like you. No, not yet. He reached out, adjusting the diamond pendant at her throat. His fingers brushed her skin and she suppressed a shiver. But 6 months working beside me? Learning how power actually functions? Seen behind the curtain? His hand dropped. We'll see what you become. Then he walked away, leaving Mara standing alone in the empty restaurant, her reflection staring back at her from the darkened windows. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she wondered if the greatest danger wasn't Adrian Moretti himself. It was the small, traitorous part of her that had found his words compelling, the part that wanted to understand his world, the part that had noticed how his eyes lit up when he talked about power and strategy and control, not with cruelty, but with genuine intellectual passion. The part that recognized, despite everything, that Adrian Moretti was the most interesting, dangerous, alive person she'd ever met. And that terrified her more than any threat ever could. Because monsters didn't just destroy you, sometimes they changed you. And Mara Cole had just agreed to spend 6 months learning from the most dangerous monster in the city. The question wasn't whether she'd survive, it was whether she'd recognize herself when it was over. The analysis took Mara most of the night to complete. She sat in her new suite, surrounded by notes and observations, trying to make sense of the world she'd been dragged into. By the time dawn crept through the windows, she'd filled 12 pages with detailed breakdowns of the meeting, power dynamics, potential weaknesses in Adrian's allies, strategic opportunities she'd noticed. She told herself she was doing it to survive, to prove her worth so she could complete her 6 months and escape. But a small part of her, the part she tried to ignore, found the puzzle fascinating. At 7:30 a.m., Margaret knocked with breakfast on a tray and a message. Adrian wanted her analysis delivered to his study by 8. Mara arrived at 7:55, her report typed and bound. She knocked once, heard his voice call for her to enter, and stepped into a room lined floor to ceiling with books. Adrian sat at his desk, already dressed in another immaculate suit, reading something on his tablet. On time again. You're building good habits, he gestured to the chair across from him. Let's see what you've produced. She handed him the report and waited, anxiety coiling in her stomach as he read. His expression remained neutral, unreadable, giving nothing away. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, he looked up. This is excellent work. Mara blinked. Really? You identified the same weaknesses in Romano's operation that took my analysts 3 weeks to compile. You noticed Castellanos tells when he's lying, the way he touches his watch, and this observation about Chen's shipping routes. Adrian tapped the page. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking I need. Despite herself, Mara felt a flush of pride, then immediately hated herself for it. So what happens now? She asked. Now we move to phase 2 of your education. Adrian stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city sprawling below. You understand the surface level, the meetings, the negotiations, the business face of what I do, but that's not where power lives, Mara. Real power exists in the spaces between, in the things people don't say, in the leverage you build when no one's watching. He turned back to her. Starting today, you'll accompany me everywhere, not just to meetings, but to all of it. The legitimate operations, the shadow work, the enforcement. You'll see how an empire actually functions. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why do you want me to see all of this? Adrian's smile was enigmatic. Because knowledge is the most valuable currency in my world, and I'm curious to see what you'll do with it. Before Mara could respond, his phone buzzed. Adrian glanced at the screen and something dark flickered across his face. It seems we have a problem that requires immediate attention. Come with me. They drove in Adrian's black Mercedes, Marcus at the wheel, through the city to a warehouse district Mara vaguely recognized. When they pulled up to a nondescript building, 2 of Adrian's men were already waiting outside. Sir, one of them said as Adrian exited the car. He's inside. Been here since last night, just like you ordered. Good. Miss Cole, stay close. The warehouse interior was mostly empty except for a single chair in the center of the concrete floor. A man sat bound to it, his face swollen and bloody, his expensive suit torn and stained. Mara's stomach lurched. "This is Vincent Caruso," Adrian said calmly, as if introducing her at a cocktail party. "He's been skimming money from one of my operations, approximately $200,000 over the past 6 months. Vincent's head jerked up at Adrian's voice. "Adrian, please, I can explain." "Can you?" Adrian moved closer, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. "Because my accountants have been very thorough. The evidence is conclusive." "It was a loan! I was going to pay it back, I swear." "A loan." Adrian's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "You stole from me and called it a loan. Tell me, Vincent, do you think I'm stupid?" No, of course not. I had debts, Adrian. Bad debts. I was desperate. So you stole from me to pay your other creditors." Adrian circled the chair slowly, thereby making your problem my problem. "Do you see the flaw in that logic?" Mara stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. This was the other side of Adrian's world, the violence, the brutality that undergirded all those polite business meetings. She wanted to look away, should look away, but she couldn't. "I'll pay it back," Vincent babbled. "Double, triple, whatever you want. Just give me time." "Time." Adrian glanced at Mara. "Everyone always wants more time. But time is a luxury, Vincent, and you've run out." He pulled a gun from inside his jacket. Mara's breath caught. "Wait." Adrian's eyes cut to her, sharp and warning. "This is what happens when people steal from me. Watch." "Please," Vincent thrashed against his bonds. "Please, Adrian, I have a family. You should have thought of them before you betrayed me." Adrian checked the gun with practiced efficiency. "Any last words?" Vincent was crying now, begging, promising anything and everything. Adrian raised the gun. Mara's hand shot out, gripping his arm. "Stop!" The warehouse went silent. Every one of Adrian's men tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Adrian looked down at where Mara's fingers pressed against his sleeve. "I told you to watch, not to interfere. You're going to kill him." "Yes." "He has a family. Children? That's not my concern." "Then make it your concern." Mara's voice echoed off the concrete walls. "You want to teach me about your world? Fine. But I'm not going to stand here and watch you execute someone because they were desperate and made a mistake." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "He stole from me, Mara. In my world, that demands a response. So respond. Take his money, his assets, his business. Bankrupt him. But don't kill him. If I show mercy, I appear weak. Others will think they can steal from me without consequence. If you kill every person who crosses you, you're just a thug with expensive suits." She released his arm, meeting his dark eyes without flinching. "You told me you saw potential in me, that I could understand your world. But this isn't power. This is just cruelty." For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. The gun remained pointed at Vincent's head. Then slowly he lowered it. "You make an interesting point." He turned to his men. "Take everything. His house, his cars, his bank accounts. Leave him with nothing but his life and his debts. Then make sure everyone knows stealing from me is a fate worse than death." Relief flooded through Mara so intensely her knees nearly buckled. Adrian moved close to her, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "You just saved a man's life. Do you feel good about yourself?" "I feel like I stopped you from making a mistake." "Did you?" His smile was cold. "Vincent Caruso now owes millions to other creditors who won't be as merciful as I'm being. His family will lose everything. His children will grow up in poverty, watching their father broken and hollow. In 6 months, maybe less, he'll wish I'd pulled the trigger." The words hit like ice water. "You don't know that. I know exactly that, because I've seen it happen 100 times. He stepped back, addressing his men. "Get him out of my sight." As Vincent was dragged away, alive but destroyed, Adrian returned his attention to Mara. "Let's go. We have another appointment." They rode in silence for several minutes before Mara found her voice. "Was that a test?" "Everything is a test." Adrian didn't look at her. "You passed, by the way." "Passed?" "I wanted to see if you had principles, if you'd stand up for them even when it was dangerous." He finally met her eyes. "Most people in my world lose their principles quickly. It's easier that way. Less complicated. And you wanted to know if I'd lose mine?" I wanted to know if you had any to lose. His expression softened slightly. You do, which means the next 6 months will be very interesting. Because you're going to try to corrupt me? Because I'm going to show you that the world isn't as simple as you think it is, that principles are luxuries most people can't afford, and that sometimes the cruel choice is the merciful one. Mara turned away, staring out the window at the city passing by. Where are we going now? To see an old friend, someone who will help you understand why I built this empire in the first place. The old friend turned out to be a woman in her 70s, living in a modest house in a middle-class neighborhood. She opened the door with a bright smile that transformed into pure joy when she saw Adrian. Adrian, you didn't tell me you were coming. She pulled him into a hug that he returned with genuine warmth. I wanted to surprise you, Nona. He kissed both her cheeks. I brought someone I'd like you to meet. This is Mara Cole, my new assistant. The woman, Nona, studied Mara with sharp, intelligent eyes. Assistant? Is that what we're calling them now? Adrian laughed. Behave. Mara, this is Rosa Moretti, my grandmother. They spent the next 2 hours in Rosa's warm, cluttered kitchen, drinking coffee and eating pastries while Rosa told stories about Adrian's childhood. Mara learned that he'd grown up poor, that his father had died when he was 12, that he'd built his empire from nothing to support his mother and grandmother. He was always so smart, Rosa said, patting Adrian's hand, but also so angry. After his father died, after what those men did, Nona. Adrian's voice held a warning. She should know. If she's going to work for you, she should understand. Rosa turned to Mara. My son, Adrian's father, owned a small restaurant, beautiful place, very popular, but he refused to pay protection money to the local crime families, so they burned it down, with him inside. Mara's breath caught. Oh my God. Adrian was 12 years old, watching his father's dream burn, while those men laughed outside. Rosa's eyes were distant, haunted. He swore that day that no one would ever have power over him again, that he would be the one people feared. And I kept that promise, Adrian said quietly. You became everything you hated, Rosa countered, but you also protected this neighborhood, made sure no one else's father died for refusing to pay tribute. So maybe, she shrugged, maybe some darkness is necessary to fight darkness. As they drove away later, Mara finally understood something about Adrian Moretti. He wasn't evil for the sake of evil. He was a man who'd watched his father murdered and decided that power was the only protection against being victimized again. It didn't excuse what he did, but it explained it. Why did you take me there? She asked. Because you see me as a monster, and I wanted you to understand that monsters are made, not born. He glanced at her. My father was a good man, honest, hardworking, kind, and he died screaming while I watched. So I learned that goodness is weakness in this world, that only power matters. Your grandmother doesn't believe that. My grandmother is protected by my power. She can afford to believe in goodness because I pay the price for it. His jaw tightened. Everyone I love is safe because I'm willing to do what good men won't. But at what cost? At every cost. His voice was cold, and I'd pay it again without hesitation. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Mara accompanied Adrian to meetings with city officials who took bribes, to inspections of his legitimate businesses that laundered money, to negotiations with rival organizations over territory and tribute. She saw the full scope of his empire, the drugs, the gambling, the protection rackets, but also the restaurants and real estate developments and charitable foundations. Adrian Moretti was a criminal, but he was also a businessman, a strategist, a chess player moving pieces most people couldn't see. And despite herself, Mara was learning. She learned how to read a room in seconds, identifying who held real power versus who just thought they did. She learned the subtle art of negotiation, when to push and when to yield. She learned that loyalty was currency and fear was leverage and information was more valuable than gold. But she also saw the cost. The violence lurking beneath every handshake, the lives destroyed to maintain order, the impossible choices that left no one clean. 3 weeks into her new life, Elena called. Mara took the call in her suite, closing the door for privacy. Elena, hi. Where are you? Elena's voice was strained. I've been to your apartment 3 times. Your landlord said you moved out. I'm working. I told you, I'm paying off the debt. By living with Adrian Moretti? Elena's voice rose. Mara, people are talking. They're saying you're his, that you're... I'm his assistant, that's all. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you sold yourself to him. The words stung because they were partially true. I'm keeping you safe, Elena. That was the deal. I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. That's what family does. Mara's throat tightened. I have 4.5 months left, then this is over. And what will you be by then? Elena asked quietly, because the Mara I knew wouldn't have lasted 3 weeks in that world without breaking. So either you're broken or you're becoming something else. The line went dead. Mara sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. Was Elena right? Was she changing? She thought about the meeting earlier that day, where she'd suggested a strategy to Adrian that would consolidate his control over the waterfront. He'd implemented it immediately, and it had worked perfectly. She'd felt proud of that. When had she started feeling proud of helping a criminal empire function more efficiently? A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Margaret entered with a garment bag. Mr. Moretti requests your presence at a formal event tonight, a charity gala. You'll need to wear this. The dress inside was stunning. Midnight blue silk that probably cost more than Mara's old car. Diamond earrings accompanied it, along with shoes that were definitely designer. I can't wear this. You can and will. Mr. Moretti was very specific. Margaret's expression softened. He has good taste. You'll look beautiful. 2 hours later, Mara descended the main staircase in the dress, feeling like an imposter. Adrian waited at the bottom, devastating in a tuxedo, and something flickered in his eyes when he saw her. You look... He paused, as if searching for words. Acceptable. Just acceptable? A smile tugged at his lips. Don't fish for compliments, Miss Cole. It's beneath you. The gala was held in a historic hotel ballroom filled with the city's elite, politicians, business leaders, socialites. Everyone knew Adrian, and everyone treated him with a mix of respect and carefully concealed fear. Mara played her role perfectly, staying at his side, making polite conversation, observing everything. She watched as Adrian donated $250,000 to the children's hospital with a smile, knowing that money probably came from drug sales and extortion. The hypocrisy should have disgusted her. Instead, she found herself admiring the performance. You're getting better at this, Adrian murmured as they danced later, his hand warm against her back. The act. The role. What act? Pretending to be comfortable in my world. His dark eyes studied her face. But it's not pretending anymore, is it? You're actually starting to understand. Understanding isn't acceptance. No, but it's the first step. He spun her smoothly, moving with the kind of grace that came from expensive lessons. Tell me something, Mara. If you could wave a magic wand and erase my organization from existence, would you? Of course. Even knowing that the vacuum would be filled by someone far worse, that the territory I control would descend into war, that the people I protect would be victimized by whoever seized power? He pulled her closer. I'm not a good man, but I'm a known quantity. I have rules. Others don't. So you're the best of the worst options? I'm the option that exists. The real question is, now that you understand how it all works, now that you've seen both sides, what will you do with that knowledge? Before Mara could answer, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, security moving quickly, then a gunshot that shattered the genteel atmosphere like broken glass. Adrian moved instantly, pulling Mara behind him, his hand going inside his jacket where she knew he kept a gun. Marcus and 2 other guards materialized from the crowd, forming a protective wall. Stay behind me, Adrian ordered. Through the panicking crowd, Mara saw them. 3 men in dark clothes, faces covered, weapons drawn. They weren't shooting randomly, they were moving with purpose, toward Adrian. Assassination attempt, Marcus said grimly. Sir, we need to get you out. No! Adrian's voice was ice. We end this, now! Everything happened in seconds. Adrian's men engaged the attackers. Gunfire exploded through the ballroom. People screamed, diving for cover. And Adrian moved like violence personified, taking down one attacker with brutal efficiency while his guards handled the others. It was over in less than a minute. 2 attackers dead, 1 wounded and restrained, the ballroom a chaos of broken glass and terrified socialites. Adrian turned to Mara, his tuxedo pristine except for a small bloodstain on his sleeve. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, too shocked to speak. "Good. Marcus, get her to the car. I need to handle this." "Adrian," Mara started, but he was already moving away, barking orders, taking control of the situation with the same calm authority he brought to business meetings. Like getting shot at was just another item on his agenda. In the car, Mara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Marcus drove in silence while she processed what had just happened. Someone had tried to kill Adrian, right in front of her, and he'd responded with such controlled violence that it was almost beautiful in its precision. When they arrived back at the estate, Adrian was already there, having ridden in a different vehicle. He found her in her suite, still in the blue dress, staring at nothing. "Drink this." He handed her a glass of amber liquid. Mara drank without thinking. Whiskey burned down her throat. "Who were they?" she asked. "Rivals, the Volkov family, most likely. They've been testing my borders for months." He loosened his bow tie with one hand. This was them making a statement. "They tried to kill you?" "Yes." "And you're just fine with that?" "It's not the first time, won't be the last." He sat down across from her. "This is the reality of my world, Mara. Violence is always one decision away. Always one betrayal, one miscalculation, one ambitious rival away. How do you live like this? By being better at violence than everyone else. By making the cost of attacking me higher than anyone's willing to pay." His expression was hard. "And now you're caught in it, because anyone who wants to hurt me will see you as a target." The implications hit her. "Elena is already being moved to a safe location. I had men on her the moment the shooting started." He leaned forward. "I told you that you belong to me, Mara. That means you're under my protection. But it also means you're a vulnerability. My enemies will try to use you against me. Then let me go. End this deal. Send me away." "No." The word was final. "You're in this now. The only way out is through." "Through what?" "Through whatever comes next." His eyes held hers. "The Volkovs just declared war, which means things are about to get very dangerous, and you're going to see exactly what I'm capable of when someone threatens what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it ignited something else, a dark thrill she didn't want to examine. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we respond, decisively, brutally, in a way that makes every other organization think twice before challenging me." He stood, his presence filling the room. "And you're going to help me plan it." "Why would I help you start a war?" "Because that war started the moment they pulled guns in that ballroom, the moment they put you in danger." His voice dropped to something almost tender. "You're my responsibility now, Mara, and I protect what's mine. Always." He left her then, closing the door quietly behind him. Mara sat in the expensive dress, in the luxurious suite, in the prison of gold and silk that Adrian had built around her, and realized something terrifying. She didn't want to escape anymore. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, between the meetings and the violence and the glimpses of the man behind the monster, she'd stopped seeing Adrian Moretti as her captor. She'd started seeing him as something else entirely, and that was far more dangerous than any assassin's bullet. The war room materialized overnight. What had been a formal dining room in Adrian's estate transformed into a command center. Maps spread across tables, computer monitors displaying surveillance feeds, armed men coming and going with military precision. Mara watched the transformation from the doorway, coffee growing cold in her hands, as Adrian orchestrated his response to the Volkov attack. "The warehouse on 5th Street," he said, pointing to a location on the map. "That's where they're storing weapons shipments. We hit it first, tonight. Send a message that they're not safe anywhere in this city." Marcus nodded, making notes. "What about their gambling operations in the East District?" "Leave those for now. I want them to think we're focused on their supply lines." Adrian's eyes were cold, calculating. "When they move resources to protect those, we strike at their real revenue, the drug distribution network on the waterfront." He looked up, catching sight of Mara. "Good, you're here. I need your analysis of the Volkov organizational structure. Weaknesses, internal conflicts, anyone who might be persuaded to switch sides. Mara entered slowly, aware of every eye in the room tracking her movement. You want me to help you destroy them? I want you to help me end this quickly with minimal collateral damage. Every day this war continues, innocent people get caught in the crossfire. His tone was matter of fact. So yes, I want your help. Unless you'd prefer I handle it the messy way. She thought about what the messy way might entail and suppressed a shiver. Give me 2 hours. I'll have something for you. You have 1 hour. We move at midnight. Mara worked in Adrian's study, surrounded by intelligence files his people had compiled on the Volkov organization. The family was Russian-born, controlled most of the city's human trafficking operations, and had been expanding aggressively into Adrian's territory for months. The attack at the gala had been their boldest move yet. As she read through the reports, a pattern emerged. Dmitry Volkov, the family patriarch, had 3 sons. The eldest, Victor, was ruthless and strategic. The middle son, Alexei, handled the financial operations. But the youngest, Nikolai, had been arrested twice for excessive violence, even by criminal standards. He was unstable, impulsive, and according to several sources, resented being left out of major family decisions. A crack in the foundation. When Mara presented her findings to Adrian, his eyes lit with predatory interest. Nikolai's the weakness. If we can drive a wedge between him and his brothers, make him feel undervalued, he'll act rashly, Mara finished, make mistakes, maybe even turn on his own family if we play it right. Exactly. Adrian studied her with something like pride. You're learning. This is how wars are won, not with the most guns, but with the best information and the willingness to exploit human nature. It feels manipulative. It is manipulative. It's also effective. He stood, checking his watch. We leave in 30 minutes. You're coming with me. Mara's stomach dropped. Coming where? To the warehouse strike. You need to see how this works in practice, not just theory. His expression brooked no argument. You're part of this now. Time you understood what that means. 20 minutes later, Mara sat in the back of an SUV, wearing a bulletproof vest that felt simultaneously too heavy and not nearly protective enough. Adrian sat beside her, calm and focused, while Marcus drove and 2 other vehicles followed with additional men. Stay in the car, Adrian instructed. Marcus will keep you safe. This should be quick. We're not engaging anyone, just sending a message. What kind of message? The kind that burns. They parked 2 blocks from the warehouse. Adrian's team moved with practiced efficiency, dividing into groups, communicating through earpieces. Mara watched through the SUV's tinted windows as they approached the building, a nondescript structure in an industrial area. How do you know the Volkovs won't have guards? She asked Marcus. Oh, they definitely have guards, he replied. Boss just knows how to handle them. Through the darkness, Mara saw Adrian's team neutralize 2 sentries with silent precision. No gunshots, no screams, just bodies dropping and being dragged out of sight. Then Adrian himself approached the warehouse, placed something against the door, and retreated to a safe distance. The explosion, when it came, was controlled but devastating. Fire bloomed through the warehouse windows, hungry flames consuming everything inside. Within minutes, the entire structure was ablaze. Adrian returned to the SUV, not a hair out of place. Let's go. Police will be here in 5 minutes. As they drove away, Mara watched the orange glow in the rearview mirror. You destroyed their weapons. And their sense of security. They'll know by morning that I hit them on their own territory, bypassed their security, and walked away untouched. Adrian's smile was cold. The psychological impact is worth more than the physical damage. What if someone was inside, someone who wasn't a guard? There wasn't. I had people watching for 3 days. I know exactly who was there and when. He met her eyes. I'm ruthless, Mara, not reckless. I don't kill unnecessarily. It's bad for business and worse for the soul. You have a soul? Debatable, but I'd like to think so. His expression softened slightly. My grandmother certainly thinks so, and I'd hate to disappoint her. The next 3 days were a blur of strategic strikes and calculated chaos. Adrian moved against the Volkovs with surgical precision, hitting supply lines, disrupting operations, making them bleed money and prestige without triggering an all-out bloodbath. And through it all, Mara was there, watching, learning, contributing strategies that Adrian implemented with devastating effectiveness. She told herself she was just surviving, playing along until her 6 months were up. But the truth was more complicated. She'd started to see the elegance in Adrian's approach to power. The way he could dismantle an enemy's operations without firing a shot. The way he protected his people while destroying his rivals. The way he built loyalty through respect and fear in equal measure. It was wrong. It was criminal. It was brilliant. And she was becoming complicit in it. On the 4th day, Elena called again. Mara almost didn't answer, but guilt won out. "Are you safe?" Elena asked immediately. "I heard about the attacks, the fires. I'm safe. Adrian has security everywhere." "Adrian." Elena's voice was sharp. "You're calling him Adrian now? Not Mr. Moretti?" Mara realized her mistake too late. "It's just easier. You're falling for him." It wasn't a question. "My God, Mara, you're actually falling for the man who owns you like property." "He doesn't own me, doesn't he? You live in his house, wear his clothes, follow his orders. You're helping him wage war against other criminals. What would you call that?" "I call it surviving." "No." Elena's voice broke. "Surviving is keeping your head down and counting the days. What you're doing is participating, enjoying it even. I can hear it in your voice." Mara wanted to deny it, to insist Elena was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. "I saved you," Mara said finally. "That's all that matters." "You saved me from Adrian Moretti by becoming his creature. Was that really saving me? Or did you just trade my prison for yours?" The line went dead again. Mara stood alone in her suite, Elena's words echoing in her mind. Was she right? Had Mara lost herself somewhere in the elegant brutality of Adrian's world? She caught her reflection in the mirror. Expensive clothes, professional styling, the diamond necklace Adrian had given her glinting at her throat like a collar. She looked like she belonged here. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. That night, Adrian summoned her to his private office after midnight. When she entered, he was standing by the window, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at the city lights. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Nikolai Volkov isn't taking the bait. He's unstable, but he's not stupid. He knows we're trying to manipulate him. So what do? We escalate. Make the pressure too intense for him to think clearly." Adrian turned to face her. "There's a shipment coming in tomorrow night. Human trafficking. Young women from Eastern Europe being smuggled in for the Volkovs' brothels." Mara's stomach turned. "And you want to steal it?" "I want to free them. Send them to a shelter my grandmother runs. Get them proper documentation. Give them a chance at a real life." His eyes were hard. "But I also want to make sure Nikolai knows I was the one who cost his family millions in lost merchandise. That I embarrassed them, made them look weak. You're going to save people and start a war at the same time. I contain multitudes." Adrian's smile was grim. "The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Because once we hit this shipment, the Volkovs will retaliate. Badly. And you're the most visible target in my orbit. So I'm bait. No. You're what I can't afford to lose." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. "Which means I need to know. Are you with me? Truly. Because if you're not, if you're just counting days until you can leave, I need to know now. Before this gets worse." Mara should have said no, should have demanded he let her go, release her from this impossible situation. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'm with you." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. Good. Because tomorrow night things get dangerous. The shipment interception was planned with military precision. Adrian's team would hit the dock warehouse where the women were being held, extract them before the Volkovs could respond, and leave evidence pointing directly to Adrian's involvement. It was aggressive, provocative, exactly the kind of move that would push Nikolai over the edge. Mara spent the day reviewing security protocols, escape routes, contingency plans. Marcus drilled her on what to do if things went wrong, how to identify threats, where to find safe rooms in the estate. "Boss is worried," Marcus said as they went through the procedures for the 3rd time. "More worried than I've seen him in years." "Because of the Volkovs? Because of you?" Marcus's expression was unreadable. "He's got feelings for you, whether he admits it or not, and that's dangerous. He doesn't. He does. I've worked for Adrian Moretti for 10 years. I've seen him with women before, pretty things who lasted a few weeks before he got bored and sent them away. You're different. He looks at you like... Marcus paused, searching for words. Like you matter. And in our world, the things that matter are the things that get used against you. That night, as Adrian's team moved on the warehouse, Mara waited at the estate with her heart in her throat. She tracked their progress through radio chatter, heard the brief firefight when Volkov guards engaged Adrian's men, listened to the tense minutes as they evacuated 23 terrified women. Then silence. "Marcus, report," she said into the radio, knowing she wasn't supposed to be on this channel but unable to help herself. Static. "Marcus?" More static, then, "We've got a problem." Adrian's voice, tense. "Nikolai was here. We've got him cornered, but he's got hostages, 2 of the women we just freed. He's demanding safe passage or he kills them." Mara's blood ran cold. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to." The gunshot that echoed through the radio made her flinch. Then Adrian's voice, calm and controlled. "Hostages secure. 1 hostile down. We're coming home." They arrived an hour later, tired and grim. Adrian had blood on his sleeve. Not his own, he assured her, and a hardness in his eyes that spoke of decisions made and lines crossed. "Nikolai?" Mara asked. "Dead. He gave me no choice." Adrian's voice was flat. "The women are safe. My grandmother's people are taking care of them, but we just killed a Volkov son. This war just went nuclear." Before Mara could respond, alarms screamed through the estate. Marcus burst into the room, weapon drawn. "They're here. 8 vehicles, heavily armed. They're coming for the boss." Adrian moved instantly. "Lockdown protocols. Get everyone to the safe rooms. Now." "Sir, we need to evacuate you." "I don't run." Adrian's voice was steel. "This is my home. We hold the line here." The battle that followed was chaos. Gunfire shattered windows. Adrian's security team engaged the Volkov assault force in a desperate firefight. And through it all, Adrian fought with a cold fury that was terrifying to witness. Mara huddled in the safe room, listening to the violence above, her hands shaking. This was real. This was the consequence of the games they'd been playing. People dying, blood spilling, war brought to their doorstep. Then the door to the safe room exploded inward. A man stood in the wreckage. One of the Volkovs. She recognized his face from the intelligence files. Victor, the eldest son. And he was looking directly at her. "Adrian Moretti's pet," he said in heavily accented English. "Perfect." He grabbed her before she could scream, his hand clamped over her mouth, dragging her from the safe room. Mara fought, clawing and kicking, but he was stronger, faster, trained. Outside, the firefight had moved to the grounds. Victor hauled her toward a waiting vehicle, using her as a human shield against anyone who might shoot. Then Adrian appeared, emerging from the smoke and chaos like an avenging angel. His suit was torn, blood, definitely his this time, staining his shoulder, but his eyes were clear and absolutely murderous. "Let her go, Victor," he said, his voice carrying despite the gunfire. "I don't think so." Victor pressed a gun to Mara's temple. "You killed my brother. Now you lose what you value most." "You have no idea what I value." Adrian's hand was steady on his own weapon. "But if you pull that trigger, you don't leave here alive. I promise you that. You can't make that shot without hitting her." "Maybe not. But Marcus can." The gunshot came from somewhere to the left. Victor's grip went slack as he dropped. A perfect headshot ending the standoff in an instant. Mara stumbled forward, and Adrian was there, catching her, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured, and for the first time since she'd met him, his voice shook. "I've got you." Around them, the battle ended. The surviving Volkov attackers retreated, their assault broken by Adrian's defense. Bodies littered the grounds, some Adrian's men, more the attackers. The cost of war, written in blood. Adrian didn't let go of Mara, even as his people secured the perimeter and tended to the wounded. He held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "I should have protected you better," he said quietly. "Should have known they'd come here. Should have—" "Stop." Mara pulled back enough to see his face. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and his shoulder wound needed medical attention. You saved me. You came for me. I'll always come for you. The words were a vow, raw and honest. Do you understand that? Whatever happens, whoever threatens you, I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you. And Mara realized with startling clarity that he meant it. That somewhere in the past weeks, Adrian Moretti, crime lord, monster, ruthless strategist, had developed feelings for her that went beyond ownership or obligation. He cared. Maybe more than cared. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. I know, she said softly, because I do the same for you. Adrian's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't expected that confession. Then he was kissing her, desperate and fierce, pouring weeks of tension and fear and impossible feelings into that single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, the world was on fire around them, and nothing would ever be the same. This changes everything, Adrian said. I know. The Volkovs won't stop. This was just the beginning. Then we finish it. Mara's voice was stronger than she felt. Together. Adrian studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have satisfied him, because he nodded. Together. They walked back into the estate, into the aftermath of violence, into the future they were building whether they wanted it or not. And Mara knew with absolute certainty that she'd crossed a line tonight. She wasn't Adrian's prisoner anymore. She was his partner, and the war they'd started together was far from over. The next morning, Mara woke in Adrian's bed, not the guest suite, but his actual bedroom, where he'd insisted she stay after the attack. He'd had the estate doctor patch up his shoulder while security swept every room for threats. She'd fallen asleep to the sound of his voice issuing orders, reorganizing defenses, preparing for the next assault. Now, in the pale morning light, she watched him sleep. Even unconscious, tension lined his face, the weight of his empire, the cost of his choices, the price of power visible in every crease. He'd killed for her last night, would have died for her if it came to that, and she'd kissed him like it was the most natural thing in the world. You're staring, Adrian said without opening his eyes. You're awake. Hard to sleep when the woman in my bed is boring holes in my skull with her eyes. He opened them, meeting her gaze. Regrets. About which part? All of it. The kiss, the partnership, the choice to stay in this world. Mara considered lying, maintaining the pretense that she was still the woman who'd slapped him in that diner, but they were past pretense now. No regrets, she said. Should I have them? Probably. This life destroys most people, corrupts them, breaks them, turns them into something unrecognizable. His hand found hers under the covers. I don't want that for you. Then what do you want? I want you to choose this freely, not because of debt or obligation or Stockholm Syndrome. His voice was serious. Your 6 months are up in 2 more months. When that time comes, I'll honor our agreement. You'll be free to walk away, debt cleared, no strings attached. And if I don't want to walk away? Something fierce and possessive flashed in Adrian's eyes. Then you stay. As my partner, my equal, my... His phone buzzed insistently. Adrian cursed, reaching for it. What? Marcus's voice came through, urgent. Boss, you need to see this. Dmitry Volkov just sent a message. It's bad. Minutes later, they stood in the war room, staring at a laptop screen. The video showed a location Mara recognized, the shelter where they'd sent the rescued women. It was burning. He hit my grandmother's shelter, Adrian said, his voice dead calm in a way that promised violence. Killed 2 of my men guarding it. The women got out safely, but his hand clenched into a fist. He's declaring total war. No more surgical strikes. This is annihilation. Then we end it, Mara said. Whatever it takes, we end it today. Adrian looked at her, something dark and grateful in his expression. You understand what that means? The cost? I understand that Dmitry Volkov just proved he'll hurt innocent people to get to you, that he's willing to burn the world down for revenge. Mara's voice was steel. So we burn him down first. I love it when you talk strategy. Adrian's smile was predatory. Marcus, assemble everyone. We're hitting the Volkov compound tonight, and this time we're not leaving anyone alive to retaliate. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity, The Volkov compound was a fortress. Guards, cameras, defensive positions designed to repel exactly this kind of assault. Adrian's team would be outnumbered 3-1, but they had surprise, motivation, and Mara's analysis of the compound's weaknesses. There's a service entrance on the east side, she explained, pointing to blueprints she'd acquired through Adrian's intelligence network. It's less defended because they use it for deliveries. If we can breach there while creating a diversion at the main gate, they'll split their forces, Adrian finished, giving us an opening to get inside. Exactly. Once inside, we go for Dmitri directly, cut the head off the snake. And if we can't get to him? Mara met his eyes. Then we burn the whole compound. Make sure the Volkov family ends tonight, one way or another. Adrian studied her for a long moment. You've changed. Have I? Or am I just finally honest about who I am? Maybe both. He turned to his assembled men. We move at midnight. Light assault, fast extraction. Our goal is Dmitri Volkov. Everything else is secondary. As the team prepared, Adrian pulled Mara aside. You're not coming on this one. The hell I'm not. Listen to me. His hands gripped her shoulders. This is different from the warehouse. This is an assault on a fortified position. People will die. Probably some of mine. Possibly me. Which is exactly why I'm coming. Mara, no. She pulled free from his grip. You said we're partners. That means I don't sit safely at home while you risk your life. That means I'm there, helping, contributing, watching your back. You're not trained for this. Then train me, right now. Whatever I need to know to survive, teach me. Her voice softened. Please, Adrian, don't make me wait here wondering if you're coming back. He searched her face, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But you stay with Marcus at all times. You follow his orders like they're mine. And if things go wrong, you run. Promise me. I promise. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But some lies were necessary. The next hours were a blur of preparation. Marcus taught Mara basic combat principles. How to move, how to shoot if absolutely necessary, how to stay alive in a firefight. She was a quick study, absorbing everything with desperate focus. By the time midnight approached, she was as ready as she'd ever be. They drove in convoy, 5 vehicles, 20 men, enough weapons to start a small war. Mara rode with Adrian and Marcus, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Nervous? Adrian asked quietly. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. His hand found hers in the darkness. But Mara, if something happens to me tonight, don't. If something happens, he continued firmly, Marcus has instructions. You'll be taken somewhere safe. Money, new identity, everything you need to disappear. I don't want to disappear without you. And I don't want you dead because of me. His voice was rough. So promise me. If I don't make it out, you'll run. You'll live. She kissed him, cutting off the words. When she pulled back, her voice was fierce. We both make it out, or neither of us does. That's the promise I'm making. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but the convoy was slowing. They'd arrived. The Volkov compound rose before them, a converted industrial complex surrounded by high walls and armed guards. Lights blazed from every window, defiant and confident. Everyone knows the plan, Adrian said into his radio. Diversion Team Alpha, you're up. The explosion at the main gate lit up the night sky. Volkov guards rushed toward it, exactly as predicted, leaving the east service entrance lightly defended. Adrian's main team moved in. What followed was controlled chaos, gunfire and shouting, Adrian's men clearing rooms with ruthless efficiency, bodies dropping as they pushed deeper into the compound. And through it all, Mara stayed close to Marcus, watching Adrian move like death personified, fast, efficient, unstoppable. They found Dmitri Volkov in his office, surrounded by bodyguards, already reaching for weapons. Adrian Moretti, Dmitri said, his accent thick, coming to my home like a thief. Your father would be ashamed. My father was a good man, which is why I'm not. Adrian's gun never wavered. You burned my grandmother's shelter, threatened innocent people. That was your mistake. Mistake? The mistake was yours, thinking you could touch my family without consequences. Dmitri's smile was ugly, You may kill me tonight, but my organization will destroy everything you love. Your grandmother, your businesses, your... He stopped, his eyes finding Mara. Understanding dawned. Her, he finished. They'll destroy her, make you watch, and you'll know that your arrogance cost her everything. Adrian pulled the trigger. The gunfight that erupted was brief and brutal. Adrian's team cut through the bodyguards with practiced violence. When it ended, Dmitry Volkov lay dead, and the room smelled of gunpowder and blood. It's done, Marcus said quietly. The Volkov family ends tonight. Adrian stood over Dmitry's body, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Mara, and she saw it, the weight of what he'd just done, the cost of his choices, the darkness he'd embraced to keep her safe. She went to him, ignoring the carnage, ignoring the blood, focusing only on his face. You did what you had to do, she said. Did I? Or did I just prove I'm everything you should fear? You proved you'd protect what matters to you, that you'd go to hell and back for the people you care about. She touched his face, gentle despite the violence surrounding them. That's not something to fear, it's something to treasure. Adrian pulled her close, and for a moment they stood in the ruins of his enemy's empire, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to burn the world together rather than let it tear them apart. We need to go, Marcus said, before more guards arrive. They extracted quickly, efficiently, leaving the Volkov compound in flames. By the time authorities arrived, Adrian's team was long gone, disappeared into the night like ghosts. In the car driving back to the estate, Mara leaned against Adrian's shoulder, exhausted and wired and forever changed. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild, consolidate power, make sure everyone knows what happens when they threaten what's mine. His arm tightened around her. And we figure out what this is between us. It's real, Mara said simply. That's all it needs to be. Adrian kissed the top of her head, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost peaceful. They'd survived the fire, faced the fear, and discovered that what they'd forged in the crucible of violence was stronger than either of them had imagined. The war was over, but their story was just beginning. The dawn after the Volkov compound burned found Mara standing on the terrace of Adrian's estate, watching smoke still rising from the distant industrial district. The city looked peaceful from up here, almost innocent, as if violence and war were just bad dreams that dissipated with the morning light. But she knew better now. Couldn't sleep either? Adrian's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him freshly showered, dressed in casual clothes that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Too much adrenaline still in my system. She accepted the coffee he handed her, their fingers brushing in a way that sent warmth through her despite the cool morning air. Is it really over? The immediate threat? Yes. Dmitry's sons are dead, his organization is in chaos. Most of his people will either scatter or pledge loyalty to me by week's end. Adrian leaned against the railing beside her. But there will always be someone new, someone ambitious who thinks they can take what's mine. So it's never really over. No, it's just managed. He studied the smoke on the horizon. I've been thinking about what you said, about not being just a thug in an expensive suit. Mara waited, sensing something important in his tone. The Volkovs built their empire on human suffering, trafficking, forced prostitution, exploitation of the desperate. Adrian's jaw tightened. I've done terrible things, Mara. I won't pretend otherwise. But I've always had lines I wouldn't cross. Rules that separated me from animals like Dmitry. And now you control his territory. Now I control his territory, Adrian confirmed. Which means I have a choice. I can continue his operations, maximize profit, maintain the status quo. Or you can change the rules. He looked at her, something vulnerable in his dark eyes. You make me want to be better than I am. Not good. I'm too far gone for that. But better. Less cruel, more strategic about who suffers and who doesn't. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm going to dismantle the Volkov trafficking operations. Free the people they've enslaved, shut down the brothels, redirect that revenue into legitimate businesses. His voice was firm, decided. I'm saying that you were right. Power doesn't have to be just about fear and brutality. It can be about control with purpose. Mara's heart swelled with something she didn't want to name. That will cost you. In revenue, in reputation. Let it cost me. I have more money than I can spend in 3 lifetimes. And my reputation, a smile tugged at his lips. My reputation will be that I'm ruthless enough to destroy the Volkovs and principled enough to refuse their dirtiest revenue streams. That's the kind of contradiction that makes people fear and respect you in equal measure. You've really thought this through. I had all night to think while you slept in my bed, looking peaceful for the first time since I met you. He turned to face her fully. I want to build something different, Mara. Not a criminal empire. I'm too pragmatic to go legitimate. But something with rules, with standards, with lines we don't cross. We? I need you. The admission seemed to cost him something. Not because of debt or obligation, but because you see possibilities I don't. You ask questions that make me examine my choices. You're the conscience I thought I'd lost 20 years ago. I'm not your conscience, Adrian. I helped you plan an assault that killed a dozen people last night. You helped me end a war that would have killed hundreds if left unchecked. You helped me protect innocent people from a man who traded in human flesh. His hand cupped her face, gentle despite the calluses from years of violence. There's a difference between necessary evil and purposeless cruelty. You understand that difference. I need someone who understands it. Before Mara could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Boss, we've got visitors. The other families want to meet. They're requesting a summit to discuss the Volkov territory. Adrian's expression shifted instantly from vulnerable to calculating. How many? All of them. Romano, Chen, Castellano, even the Bratva representatives from upstate. They want to negotiate before anyone else makes a move. Tell them we meet tomorrow. Neutral ground, the Belmont Hotel, Conference Room A, and Marcus? Adrian's smile was cold. Make sure they know I'm coming with proposals, not requests. After Marcus left, Adrian turned back to Mara. This is it. The moment where I either consolidate power or trigger another war. I need your help. What kind of help? The kind where we walk into a room full of predators and convince them that cooperating with me is more profitable than opposing me. He pulled out his phone, already pulling up files. We have 24 hours to build a framework that reorganizes half the city's criminal operations. Think you're up for it? Mara should have been terrified, should have recognized this as the moment where she became fully complicit in Adrian's world, crossing lines she could never uncross. Instead, she felt alive. Show me what we're working with. They spent the day in Adrian's study, building what amounted to a business proposal for organized crime. Mara's analytical skills, honed in the past 2 months, combined with Adrian's deep understanding of criminal economics to create something remarkable. The Volkov trafficking operations generated approximately $12 million annually, Mara said, studying the spreadsheets. But the overhead was massive: security, bribes, constant legal exposure. If we redirect that infrastructure into high-end escort services, consensual, well-paid, protected, we could generate similar revenue with a fraction of the risk. And appear more ethical while doing it, Adrian added. The other families will appreciate the reduced heat from law enforcement. What about their drug distribution networks? We keep those, but with modifications. No sales near schools, no targeting addicts with predatory practices, better quality control to reduce overdoses. Adrian made notes on his tablet. It's still illegal, still profitable, but less likely to generate the kind of public outcry that brings federal attention. You're essentially proposing ethical criminality. I'm proposing sustainable criminality. There's a difference. He looked up at her. The families that last aren't the most violent or the most ruthless. They're the ones that adapt, that understand when to push and when to pull back, that build systems instead of just seizing opportunities. By midnight, they had a comprehensive proposal. Adrian would take control of the former Volkov territories, but instead of simply absorbing them, he'd create a cooperative framework where the other families receive percentages based on their support and cooperation. It's brilliant, Mara said, reviewing their final document. You're turning potential enemies into shareholders. I'm turning chaos into structure, giving them a reason to want me to succeed. Adrian stretched, exhaustion finally showing on his face. The question is whether they'll see it as strength or weakness. They'll see it as strength, because you're offering this from a position of power after destroying the Volkovs, You're not asking for cooperation, you're defining the terms of it. Adrian's smile was genuine. See? This is why I need you. You think like a strategist, not just a survivor. The summit the next day was held in one of the city's most elegant hotels, in a private conference room that had probably hosted hundreds of legitimate business meetings. The irony wasn't lost on Mara as she watched crime lords file in wearing designer suits and expensive watches. Romano arrived first, his weathered face neutral, but his eyes sharp. Chen followed with 2 bodyguards, his expression unreadable. Castellano came with his nephew, clearly positioning the younger man as his heir. The Bratva sent Alexei Volkov, a distant cousin of Dmitri's who'd wisely stayed neutral during the war. Adrian waited until everyone was seated before standing. Mara sat beside him, positioned as his second, her presence a statement in itself. "Gentlemen," Adrian began, his voice carrying effortless authority, "thank you for coming. I know there's been speculation about my intentions regarding the former Volkov territories. So let me be clear. I'm not here to start another war. I'm here to propose a partnership." Romano leaned forward. "Partnership? You destroyed an entire family. Why would we trust that you won't do the same to us?" "Because the Volkovs were unstable, violent, and bad for business. They brought heat, attention, and chaos." Adrian's voice was cold. "I removed a cancer. Now I'm offering to fill that vacuum in a way that benefits everyone in this room." He nodded to Mara, who stood and distributed the proposal documents they'd prepared. "What you're holding is a framework for cooperative governance of the former Volkov territories," she explained, falling naturally into the presentation role. "Rather than one family absorbing everything, this creates a shared system where profits are distributed based on contribution and support." Chen studied the documents with raised eyebrows. "You're proposing we work together? Share territory?" "I'm proposing we stop fighting over scraps and start building something sustainable," Adrian said. "The old model, constant territorial disputes, wars that destroy revenue, attracting law enforcement attention, it's inefficient, expensive, stupid. And you expect us to believe you're doing this out of altruism?" Castellano's tone was skeptical. "I expect you to believe I'm doing this out of self-interest, which you should trust far more than altruism." Adrian's smile was sharp. "I control the largest territory in this city. War is expensive and unpredictable. Peace, structured, regulated peace, is profitable and controllable. I'm offering you a share of that profit in exchange for stability." "What's the catch?" Romano asked. "The catch is that I set the rules. I decide what operations we run and how we run them. No trafficking, no exploitation of minors, no operations that generate excessive law enforcement attention." Adrian's voice hardened. "Break those rules and you answer to me, just like the Volkovs did." The room went silent. It was a bold play, offering cooperation while simultaneously asserting dominance. Finally, Alexei Volkov spoke, his accent thick but his English clear. "My cousin Dmitri would have laughed at this proposal, called it weakness." "Your cousin Dmitri is dead because he couldn't adapt," Adrian replied. "Evolution favors those who recognize when the environment changes. The question is, are you evolved enough to see the opportunity here?" Alexei studied Adrian for a long moment, then smiled. "I am. The Bratva will support this framework." One by one, the others agreed. Some enthusiastically, some reluctantly, but all of them recognized the truth. Adrian had won the war and was now defining the peace. They could accept his terms, or become his next targets. As the meeting concluded and contracts were signed, Mara watched Adrian transform the city's criminal landscape with nothing but strategic thinking and the credible threat of violence. This was power, real power, not just the ability to destroy, but the ability to reshape, rebuild, and control. And she'd helped make it happen. After the summit, as they drove back to the estate, Adrian was quiet. Mara let the silence stretch, sensing he was processing something important. "My father would have hated this," he finally said. "He believed in honest work, in building something legitimate. He would have been ashamed of what I've become." "Would he?" Mara challenged gently. "Or would he have understood that you built something that protects people like him? That you created a system with rules that prevent the kind of senseless violence that killed him?" I'm rationalizing criminality. You're making the best of an impossible situation. The criminal world exists whether you're part of it or not. At least with you in charge, there are standards, lines that don't get crossed. She touched his hand. That's not nothing. Adrian's fingers intertwined with hers. How did you get so wise? I learned from a very complicated man who taught me that the world isn't black and white. It's all shades of gray, and the best we can do is try to make our shade a little lighter. He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. I'm definitely not making anything lighter. No, but you're making it more organized, more predictable, less likely to destroy innocent people. Mara met his eyes. That counts for something. The next weeks were a blur of reorganization. Adrian dismantled the Volkov trafficking operations with surgical precision, working with his grandmother's shelter network to relocate and protect the freed victims. He restructured the drug operations to reduce harm and maximize efficiency. He created legitimate businesses to launder money while actually providing real services and jobs. And through it all, Mara was beside him, analyzing, strategizing, challenging his decisions when they veered too far into cruelty, supporting them when they were necessary. She'd become his partner in every sense of the word. One evening, 3 months after the Volkov War ended, they sat in Adrian's study reviewing the latest revenue reports. The cooperative framework was working, profits were up across all territories, law enforcement attention was down, and the city's criminal underworld had achieved a stability it hadn't known in decades. Your 6 months are up tomorrow, Adrian said suddenly, looking up from his tablet. Mara's heart stuttered. She'd been so immersed in the work, in their partnership, that she'd almost forgotten about the deadline. I know. Which means you're free. The debt is paid. You can walk away whenever you want. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand gripped the tablet just a little too tight. Is that what you want? For me to leave? What I want is irrelevant. I made you a promise. 6 months, then freedom. I'm honoring that promise. Mara stood, moving around the desk to face him. And if I don't want to leave? Hope and fear warred in Adrian's expression. Then you need to understand what staying means. Not as an employee or someone working off debt, but as my partner, as someone who's choosing this life, these decisions, this world. I understand. Do you? Because there's no going back, Mara. Once you choose this freely, once you commit to being part of this empire, you become everything you used to despise. You become complicit in all of it. I'm already complicit. I've been complicit since the moment I helped you plan the Volkov assault. She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. The question isn't whether I'm complicit. It's whether I'm strong enough to be your equal in this world, to stand beside you, challenge you, help you build something better than what came before. And are you? I don't know, but I want to find out. She smiled. Besides, someone needs to keep you from turning into a complete monster. Might as well be me. Adrian pulled her into his lap, his arms wrapping around her like he'd never let go. You're insane. You know that, right? Walking away from freedom to stay in this world? Maybe. Or maybe I've finally found where I belong. She kissed him, slow and deep, sealing her choice. Not in spite of the darkness, but because of what we can build within it. I love you, Adrian said against her lips, the words raw and honest. I didn't think I was capable of it anymore, but I love you. I love you too, which is possibly the craziest thing I've ever admitted. Mara laughed, the sound bright despite the weight of what they were choosing. We're going to be terrible together. Absolutely terrible, he agreed, and absolutely unstoppable. The next morning, Mara called Elena. They hadn't spoken in weeks, their friendship strained to breaking by Mara's choices. Hello? Elena's voice was wary. It's me. I wanted you to know. My debt is paid. I'm free. Thank God. When are you coming home? I'm not. Mara took a breath. I'm staying with Adrian, not because I have to, because I choose to. Silence stretched across the line. You're choosing him? The man who owns half the crime in this city? The man who's killed people? I'm choosing a partnership that gives me more power and purpose than anything in my old life. I'm choosing to help build something better than what existed before. I'm choosing to become a criminal, Elena finished, her voice hard. To throw away everything good in you for a man who's poisoned you. He hasn't poisoned me. He's shown me who I really am. Someone strong enough to make hard choices, someone capable of strategic thinking and moral complexity. Mara's voice was steady. I'm sorry you can't understand that, but I'm not sorry for my choice. Then I guess this is goodbye. Elena's voice cracked. Because I can't watch you destroy yourself. I can't pretend this is okay. I know, and I'm sorry. But Elena? Mara paused. The money Adrian's organization donated to the women's shelter? The new job placement program for former trafficking victims? The scholarship fund for kids from our old neighborhood? That's my work. That's what I convinced him to build. Blood money doing good things is still blood money. Maybe, but it's doing more good than my old life ever did. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I love you. I'll always love you, but I can't be who you need me to be anymore. And I can't watch you become who he's making you. Elena's voice was thick with unshed tears. Goodbye, Mara. The line went dead. Mara sat in silence, mourning the friendship she'd just lost, the last connection to her old life severed. When Adrian found her an hour later, he pulled her close without asking what was wrong. She'll never understand, Mara said quietly. No. People who live in the light rarely understand those of us who choose the shadows. He kissed her forehead. But you're not alone in the dark. You have me. Is that supposed to be comforting? You're the definition of morally compromised. True, but I'm your morally compromised partner in crime, literally. His smile was gentle, and together we're going to build something that matters, even if no one else sees it that way. Over the following months, they did exactly that. Adrian's empire transformed under their combined influence. The most exploitative operations were shut down or restructured. Revenue streams were redirected toward legitimate businesses that actually created jobs. The protection rackets became genuine security services. The loan operations offered fair terms instead of predatory interest rates. It was still crime, still illegal, still morally gray at best. But it was better than what came before, and Mara could live with better. She implemented oversight systems, created accountability measures, built-in protections for the most vulnerable. She turned Adrian's empire from a purely extractive operation into something that occasionally gave back to the communities it operated within. You're turning me into a philanthropist, Adrian complained one evening, reviewing her latest proposal for a youth program in the neighborhood where his father had died. I'm turning you into someone who understands that sustainable power requires investment in the people you govern, even if that governance is illegal. Same thing. Not even close. But Mara smiled, knowing he understood exactly what she was doing, that he was letting her do it because some part of him, the part that remembered his father's dreams, wanted to believe in something beyond pure power. 6 months after her debt was officially cleared, Adrian presented her with a gift. Not jewelry or clothes or any of the expensive things he could easily afford. A business card. Mara Cole, Chief Strategic Officer, Moretti Enterprises, she read aloud. The legitimate side of my operations, real salary, real authority, real legal standing. Adrian watched her carefully. You're not my assistant anymore. You're my partner. I want that reflected in everything we do, both the legal and illegal sides. Adrian, you've transformed how I think about power, Mara. Made me believe that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty, that control can coexist with compassion. His voice was serious. I want the world to know that you're not just my partner in private. You're my equal in all things. Mara studied the card, feeling the weight of what it represented. Official acknowledgement, public partnership, a statement that she'd chosen this life freely and was building something real within it. Equal partners in crime, she said softly. Equal partners in everything. He pulled her close. Which reminds me, I have a proposal that requires your strategic input. What kind of proposal? Adrian produced a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not ostentatious, but elegant and unmistakably expensive. The kind where you marry a criminal and become even more hopelessly entangled in this world than you already are. Mara's breath caught. You're asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to formalize a partnership that's already survived assassination attempts, gang wars, and moral compromise. To build something permanent together, both in the empire we're creating and in our personal lives. His dark eyes held hers. To choose the darkness together, permanently. She should have said no, should have recognized this as the final point of no return, the choice that would define the rest of her life. Instead, she said, yes. Because somewhere between that first slap in the diner and this moment, Mara Cole had discovered who she really was. Not the frightened waitress trying to survive, not the good girl who played by society's rules. She was someone who could stand beside a monster and make him better while becoming something more powerful herself. Someone who could navigate moral complexity without losing herself entirely. Someone who could build something meaningful in the shadows. Yes, she repeated, and Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger like a promise. A promise of power shared, darkness embraced, and a future built on blood and strategy, and the strange, fierce love they'd forged in the crucible of violence. The wedding was small, just Adrian's grandmother, Marcus, and a few trusted members of Adrian's inner circle. Elena didn't come, hadn't answered Mara's invitation. But as Mara stood beside Adrian, promising to partner with him in all things, she felt the rightness of her choice settle into her bones. This was where she belonged. Not in the light, pretending to be something she wasn't, but here, in the gray spaces between right and wrong, building something better than pure darkness while accepting that it would never be truly light. I now pronounce you partners in life and in crime, the officiant said, and everyone laughed because it was true in ways civilians could never understand. When Adrian kissed her, Mara tasted their future, dangerous, powerful, complicated, and entirely their own. The empire they'd built together was just beginning, and the woman who'd once slapped a crime lord in a diner was now standing beside him as his equal, ready to reshape the darkness into something that mattered, together. Always together. The honeymoon lasted exactly 3 days before reality came crashing back. Mara stood in the war room, their war room now, she supposed, watching Marcus pin photographs to the board with methodical precision. Each photo showed a different crime scene, all connected by one disturbing pattern. 5 in the past week, Marcus said, his voice grim. All former Volkov operations that we shut down. All burned to the ground with identical accelerants. Adrian studied the photos with narrowed eyes, his hand resting on the small of Mara's back in a gesture that had become automatic. Someone sending a message. Or someone wants revenge, Mara observed, her analytical mind already cataloging patterns. The Volkov family had loyalists. Maybe someone who wasn't at the compound that night. Someone who's been waiting for the right moment to strike back. Or someone who wants to destabilize the peace we've built, Adrian countered. Make the other families question whether cooperation with me is worth the trouble. His phone buzzed. Adrian glanced at it and something dark flickered across his face. It's Romano. He's requesting an emergency meeting. Says he has information we need to hear. They met Romano at a neutral location, a warehouse that technically belonged to Chen but was considered shared ground under their new cooperative framework. The older man looked exhausted, worry lines deep around his eyes. Thank you for coming, Romano said, dispensing with pleasantries. I'll get straight to it. The fires aren't random, they're coordinated, and they're being orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of your operations. Who? Adrian's voice was ice. Romano hesitated, then slid a folder across the table. Inside were surveillance photos of a man Mara didn't recognize. Late 40s, sharp-featured, expensive suit. Viktor Sokolov. He's Bratva, but not the local branch. He's from the old country, sent here 3 months ago allegedly to oversee investments. Romano's expression was grave. But my sources say he's actually here for revenge. His sister was married to Dmitry Volkov. The implications hit like a sledgehammer. He's family, Mara said quietly. Blood family. And he's been building a coalition of everyone who lost power or profit when you restructured the territories. The brothel owners you put out of business. The dealers whose operations you restricted. The enforcers who used to profit from chaos. Romano leaned forward. He's promising them a return to the old ways. Unrestricted profit. No rules, no cooperation, just pure predatory capitalism. How many? Adrian asked. At least 30 key players, maybe more. They're being careful, keeping it quiet, but Romano pulled out another document. They're planning something big. An attack designed to cripple your operations and prove that your cooperative framework is a weakness. Mara studied the intelligence, her mind racing. When? We don't know. Soon. Sokolov's been patient, building his coalition slowly, but the fires suggest he's entering the endgame. After Romano left, Adrian stood silent for a long moment, processing the threat. Finally, he turned to Mara. What do you think? It still thrilled her, the way he asked for her opinion like it mattered as much as his own. I think Sokolov is right about one thing. The cooperative framework is a vulnerability. It requires trust, shared interests, mutual benefit. If he can break that trust, make the other families doubt whether peace is profitable, the whole system collapses, Adrian finished, and we're back to territorial wars and constant violence. So we don't let him break it. We prove that cooperation is stronger than chaos. Mara moved to the map on the wall, studying the city's territories. He's targeting former Volkov operations because he wants to invoke Dmitri's memory. Remind people of the old ways. We counter that by showing what the new way has accomplished. How? By making his coalition irrelevant. Everyone Sokolov has recruited, they're motivated by profit. They joined him because they think returning to unrestricted operations will make them more money. She turned to face Adrian. We prove them wrong. We show the other families concrete numbers demonstrating that our system is more profitable than the old chaos. Adrian's eyes lit with understanding. A presentation, a summit, gathering all the families and laying out exactly how much everyone has gained from cooperation. Exactly. Make it public. Make it undeniable. Force Sokolov's coalition to choose between ideology and their bank accounts. Mara smiled. Money always wins. You're assuming they'll care about facts. Some people just want to watch the world burn. Some people, yes, but most criminals are pragmatists. They're in this business for profit, not principles. She moved closer to him. Sokolov is betting that fear and nostalgia will trump rational self-interest. We prove him wrong. Adrian pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. And if we're wrong? If enough of them choose chaos anyway? Then we fight, like we always do. Mara's voice was steady. But we try peace first, because that's what separates us from men like Sokolov. The summit was scheduled for 1 week later, giving them time to prepare an airtight case. Mara worked 18-hour days, compiling data, building presentations, crafting arguments that would appeal to the pragmatic self-interest of career criminals. She discovered that in the years since Adrian had implemented the cooperative framework, territorial disputes were down 73%. Law enforcement attention had decreased by 46%. And most importantly, profits were up across every family's operations by an average of 32%. These numbers are remarkable, she told Adrian as they reviewed the final presentation. You've essentially created a criminal cartel that functions better than most legitimate corporations. We created it, he corrected. None of this happens without your strategic thinking, or your willingness to change. Most crime lords would rather die than admit cooperation might be smarter than competition. Most crime lords don't have you whispering strategy in their ear. He kissed her temple. Or threatening to leave if they act like thugs. I never threatened to leave. No, you just looked disappointed, which was somehow worse. His smile was genuine. You weaponized guilt. Very effective. The night before the summit, Mara couldn't sleep. She stood on the terrace, watching the city lights, thinking about how far she'd come from that diner where she'd slapped Adrian Moretti in a moment of desperate courage. Second thoughts? Adrian asked, joining her with 2 glasses of wine. Third or fourth thoughts, actually. She accepted the glass. I keep wondering if we're deluding ourselves, thinking we can make crime civilized, violence strategic, power ethical. We probably are deluding ourselves, Adrian admitted. But it's a useful delusion. It gives us purpose beyond just accumulating money and eliminating rivals. Is that enough? Purpose built on illegal foundations? I don't know, but it's what we have. He looked out at the city they'd reshaped. My father built something legitimate and died for it. I built something illegitimate and survived. Maybe the truth is that morality is less important than effectiveness in protecting what matters. That's a depressing worldview. It's a realistic one. The world doesn't reward virtue, Mara. It rewards power, intelligence, and the willingness to do what others won't. He turned to her. But within that framework, we can still choose to be less cruel, to build systems that minimize harm, to create order instead of chaos. Is that what tomorrow is about? Creating order. Tomorrow is about survival. If Sokolov succeeds in destroying the cooperative framework, we're back to constant war. More death, more violence, more innocent people caught in crossfire. Adrian's voice was firm. I won't let that happen. Whatever it takes. The summit was held in the same hotel as before, but this time every major player in the city's criminal underworld was present. Mara watched them file in. Hardened men who'd built empires on violence, but who'd also profited from the stability Adrian had created. And in the back, watching with cold calculation, sat Viktor Sokolov and his coalition. Adrian stood at the front of the room, Mara beside him, and began their presentation. The data was irrefutable. Cooperation had made everyone richer, safer, more powerful. The old model of constant territorial warfare had been expensive and unsustainable. The new system worked. Some of you have been approached by Viktor Sokolov, Adrian said, his voice carrying through the room. He's promised you a return to the old ways. Unrestricted operations, no rules, maximum profit. Sokolov stood, his accent thick but his English clear. Because that is what we are, Moretti. Criminals, predators. We do not cooperate. We conquer. We do not share. We take. You have made us soft, civilized, weak. I've made you rich, Adrian countered. I've made you powerful. I've made you sustainable. Those aren't weaknesses. They're strengths. They're chains. Sokolov's voice rose. You control us through your rules, your frameworks, your cooperation. You have turned wolves into dogs, begging for scraps from your table. I've turned chaos into profit, Adrian corrected. And anyone who thinks returning to constant warfare will make them more money is welcome to do the math. Mara? She stepped forward, pulling up charts on the display screen. Before the cooperative framework, territorial disputes cost the assembled families an average of $8 million annually in direct conflict expenses. Security, medical costs, legal fees, lost revenue from damaged operations. That's not counting the opportunity cost of focusing on warfare instead of business development. She clicked to the next slide. Since implementing cooperation, those costs have dropped to under $1 million annually. That's a $7 million saving per year. Multiply that across all families, and we're talking about tens of millions in recovered revenue. Blood money, Sokolov shouted. You speak of profits while forgetting honor. The Volkovs were animals who traded in human flesh, Mara interrupted, her voice cutting through the room. They were inefficient, brutal, and ultimately destroyed by their own excesses. If you want to honor their memory, you'll end up just as dead. The room erupted in murmurs. Sokolov's face turned red with rage. You dare speak to me this way? You, who were nothing but a waitress before Moretti made you his whore? The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's hand moved toward his weapon. Adrian's expression went deadly calm. But Mara spoke first. I was a waitress, she said clearly. I was also someone brave enough to slap Adrian Moretti in front of his entire crew and survive. Someone smart enough to transform a criminal empire into a profitable enterprise. Someone strong enough to stand here and tell you that nostalgia for chaos is stupidity dressed up as honor. She moved towards Sokolov, fearless. You want to return to the old ways? Fine. But understand what that means. Constant warfare, law enforcement crackdowns, dead soldiers, burned operations, families destroying each other over territory that generates less profit than our current cooperation. Then we fight, Sokolov declared. Better to die as wolves than live as dogs. Better to live as intelligent predators than die as rabid animals, Mara shot back. The choice is yours, all of yours. She turned to address the room. Viktor Sokolov is offering you war. We're offering you profit. He's promising honor through violence. We're delivering power through strategy. He wants you to choose based on emotion. We want you to choose based on math. The numbers don't lie, Chen spoke up from his seat. I've made more money in the past year than in the previous 5, with less risk, less conflict, less exposure. As have I, Castellano added. The cooperative framework works. It's not exciting, perhaps, but it's effective. One by one, the families voiced their support. Not because they loved Adrian, but because they loved profit more than they loved chaos. Sokolov watched his coalition crumble, rage and humiliation warring on his face. You have all become weak, domesticated. My sister's husband would be ashamed to see what you've become. Your sister's husband died because he couldn't adapt, Adrian said coldly. Because he valued brutality over strategy, fear over loyalty, chaos over control. He was a dinosaur, Sokolov, and dinosaurs go extinct. Then I will make you extinct! Sokolov reached for something inside his jacket, and Marcus put 3 bullets in his chest before the weapon even cleared the holster. The room erupted in chaos. Adrian's security team moved instantly, weapons drawn, creating a protective wall around Adrian and Mara. The other family's bodyguards drew weapons but held fire, waiting for direction from their bosses. Sokolov lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath him, eyes wide with shock and fading light. "Anyone else want to challenge the new order?" Adrian asked, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chaos. "Anyone else nostalgic for the old ways?" Silence. "Good. Then let's be very clear about what just happened here. Viktor Sokolov came to this summit armed, intending violence. He drew a weapon in what was supposed to be neutral ground, and he paid the price for that choice." Adrian's gaze swept the room. "The cooperative framework stands. The rules stand, and anyone who breaks those rules will answer to all of us. Not just me, all of us, because we're stronger together than divided." One by one, the families nodded their agreement. Not because they were afraid, though Adrian's swift response certainly reminded them of his capabilities, but because they'd done the math and recognized the truth. Cooperation was more profitable than competition. As the summit concluded and crime lords filed out, careful to step around Sokolov's body, Romano approached Adrian and Mara. "That was well played," he said quietly. "Both of you. The data, the presentation, the appeal to self-interest. Very effective." "Thank you," Mara replied, still processing the violence she'd just witnessed. "But understand this. You've made enemies today. Not everyone who voted to support you truly believes in cooperation. Some are just waiting for a better opportunity to strike." Romano's expression was serious. "Stay vigilant, both of you." After he left, Adrian turned to Mara. "You held your ground against Sokolov. Didn't back down even when he tried to humiliate you. He underestimated me. They all do." She looked at Sokolov's body being removed by Adrian's cleanup crew. "Should I feel something? Guilt? Remorse? He died because of our choices. He died because of his own choices. He came here planning violence. We just responded faster." Adrian's hand found hers. "But if you're asking whether it gets easier, watching people die, making decisions that lead to death, the answer is no. It doesn't. You just get better at carrying the weight." "Is that what we're doing? Carrying the weight so others don't have to?" "That's what we tell ourselves. Whether it's true?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe we're just rationalizing. Maybe we're actually making a difference. Maybe it's both." They drove back to the estate in silence, both processing what had happened. As they pulled through the gates, Mara saw a familiar car parked in the driveway. Elena, her former best friend, stood by the entrance, looking uncomfortable and determined in equal measure. When Mara exited the vehicle, Elena's eyes widened at the sight of her. Elegant clothes, confident posture, the ring on her finger glinting in the afternoon sun. "You came," Mara said, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "I almost didn't. Should have stayed away, probably." Elena's voice was strained. "But I saw the news, the fires, the violence, and I thought—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "I thought you might need a friend." "I have friends. You have associates, business partners, people who benefit from your position." Elena's eyes were sad. "That's not the same thing." Adrian squeezed Mara's hand once, then headed inside, giving them privacy. Elena watched him go with poorly concealed suspicion. "He's different than you think," Mara said. "Is he? Because from where I stand, he's exactly what I think, a criminal who killed people today. How did you—" "It's all over the underground networks. Viktor Sokolov, dead at a summit. Adrian Moretti consolidating power. You by his side." Elena's voice cracked. "You've become exactly what I was afraid you'd become." "And what's that?" "Powerful, dangerous, complicit in violence." Elena moved closer. "But also, I don't know. More yourself than you ever were before. Which terrifies me because it means this isn't corruption. This is revelation. You actually belong in that world." Mara didn't deny it, couldn't deny it. "I do belong here. I found purpose, partnership, power I never imagined having. I've helped build something that actually makes a difference, even if it's built on illegal foundations. And the cost? The violence? The blood? I carry it, we both do. But we also use our power to create systems that reduce harm, protect vulnerable people, build something sustainable. Mara met Elena's eyes. It's not perfect. It's probably not even good, but it's better than the chaos that existed before. Elena studied her for a long moment. I came here thinking I'd try one more time to convince you to leave, to come back to the light, to save yourself. She laughed bitterly. But you don't need saving, do you? You chose this, freely, with full knowledge of what it means. I did, and I'd choose it again. Then I guess this really is goodbye, because I can't— Elena's voice broke. I can't watch you become more powerful, more deeply embedded in that world. It hurts too much. I understand. And Mara did. Elena was choosing her own moral clarity over their friendship, and there was a strange honor in that. For what it's worth, you saved my life once, gave me family when I had none. I'll never forget that. But you've found a new family now. Yes, a darker one, a more complicated one, but family nonetheless. Elena turned to leave, then paused. Be careful, Mara. Power is seductive. It makes you think you're in control when you're really just being controlled by it. Don't lose yourself completely. I won't. I have someone who reminds me who I am, who challenges me to be better even within the darkness. Adrian. Adrian. Elena shook her head, amazed and horrified. You really do love him. I really do. Despite everything, because of everything, I love him. After Elena drove away, Mara stood alone for a moment, mourning the final death of her old life. Then she walked inside, shedding the weight of who she used to be. Adrian waited in his study, a glass of whiskey in hand. He looked up as she entered, question in his eyes. She's gone, Mara said simply. For good this time. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was right. I do belong here, with you, in this world we're building. She moved into his arms, finding comfort in his solid presence. No more ghosts of my old life. No more pretending I'm something I'm not. Just this. Just us. Just us, Adrian echoed, against the world if necessary. Hopefully not against the world. We've worked hard to make allies. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. True. We're much more likely to face manageable opposition rather than total annihilation. See? Progress. Over the following months, the cooperative framework strengthened. The families that had witnessed Sokolov's death understood the consequences of betrayal, but they also saw the benefits of continued partnership. Revenue increased, law enforcement pressure decreased. The city's criminal underworld achieved a stability unprecedented in its history. And at the center of it all stood Adrian and Mara Moretti, equal partners in an empire built on blood and strategy and the strange alchemy that turned chaos into order. Mara threw herself into expanding their legitimate operations, using them as cover for money laundering, but also as genuine businesses that created jobs and served communities. She established foundations, funded education programs, built networks of support for people trying to escape exactly the kind of desperate situations that had once trapped her and Elena. You're turning me into a civic leader, Adrian complained one evening, reviewing her latest proposal for a youth center in his old neighborhood. I'm turning you into someone who understands that power requires investment in stability. Happy communities don't rebel. Educated populations create economic opportunities. It's all strategic. But her smile acknowledged the truth. She was making him better, and they both knew it. You're also making me soft. You killed 3 people last month. I'd hardly call that soft. Fair point. He pulled her close. But I'm definitely softer than I was. Less quick to violence, more willing to negotiate, more— He searched for the word human. Is that a bad thing? It's dangerous. Humanity is vulnerability in my world. The moment people see you as human rather than monster, they think they can challenge you. Let them think that, then surprise them with the monster when necessary. Mara kissed him. You're most dangerous when people underestimate you. A reputation for occasional mercy makes your rare moments of brutality all the more effective. You've become Machiavellian. I learned from the best. A year after the summit, Rosa Moretti invited them to dinner. The evening was warm, her garden in full bloom, and she served the kind of traditional meal that reminded Adrian of his childhood. "You've changed, my boy," she said, studying Adrian with sharp eyes. "Less angry, more settled." "I got married, Nonna. Men change when they marry." "Some men change. Others just bring their wives into their darkness." Rosa turned to Mara. "But you brought light into his darkness, made him remember there's more to power than fear." "I just reminded him who his father was," Mara replied gently, "that good men can be destroyed by this world, but their dreams don't have to die with them. My son would have liked you, would have appreciated what you've done with Adrian's empire." Rosa's eyes misted, making it mean something beyond just money and violence. After dinner, as they walked through Rosa's garden, Adrian was quiet. Finally, he spoke. "I used to think my father's death taught me that goodness was weakness, that the only protection in this world was power built on fear." His voice was soft. "But you've shown me something different. That power can protect goodness if wielded carefully, that you can be ruthless in defense of something better. Your father's death taught you survival. I'm just helping you remember what you're surviving for. For this." He gestured at the garden, the house, his grandmother visible through the window. "For family. For the people and places worth protecting. For building something that lasts beyond just my lifetime." "Exactly. Though I'd appreciate if we could build that lasting empire without too many more assassination attempts." "I'll see what I can do," Adrian promised, and they both laughed at the absurdity of their life together. 2 years after their marriage, Mara stood on the terrace where she'd so often contemplated her choices, watching the sun set over the city they'd reshaped. She heard Adrian's footsteps before he spoke. "Thinking about where we started? Thinking about how impossible this should have been, how a single moment of desperate courage led to—" She gestured at everything around them. "All of this. You slapped me. I was intrigued. The rest followed naturally. Nothing about this was natural. We built it deliberately, carefully, against every odd." "True." Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you regret any of it? The choices? The compromises? The person you've become?" Mara considered the question honestly. She'd helped plan operations that destroyed rival organizations. She'd stood by while Adrian made decisions that led to deaths. She'd become complicit in a criminal empire, using her intelligence and strategic thinking to make illegal operations more efficient. She'd also freed trafficked victims, funded education programs, created systems that protected vulnerable people, and transformed a purely predatory empire into something with rules and standards. She'd lost her best friend, her old life, her innocence. She'd gained power, purpose, partnership, and a love forged in fire and complexity. "No regrets," she said finally. "I made my choices with full knowledge of their cost, and I'd make them again. Even knowing where it would lead, what you'd become? Especially knowing that, because I've become someone who matters, someone who makes a difference, even if it's in morally gray ways." She turned in his arms to face him. "I've become yours, and you've become mine, and together we've built something impossible. A criminal empire with ethical standards. A partnership that transforms darkness into something slightly less dark." She smiled. "Not redemption. We're too far gone for that. But purpose. Meaning. The sense that our power serves something beyond just ourselves." "I love you," Adrian said, the words still carrying weight even after years together. "I love who you are, who you've become, who you continue to become. I love you too. The monster and the man, the crime lord and the grandson who visits his grandmother every Sunday, all of it." They stood together as night fell over the city, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something extraordinary from blood and strategy and impossible love. Behind them, the empire they'd created hummed with life, operations running smoothly, families cooperating, systems functioning. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was theirs, shaped by their choices, governed by rules they'd written together. "What do you think happens next?" Mara asked. "Next, we keep building, keep adapting, keep staying one step ahead of whoever wants to challenge us." Adrian's arms tightened around her. We face whatever comes together, like we always have. Together, Mara echoed, and the word was a promise. A promise that they'd continue choosing the darkness together, not because they were forced to, but because they'd found light within it. Light in partnership, in purpose. In the strange and fierce love between a crime lord and the woman who'd slapped him and changed everything. The city stretched below them, full of secrets and shadows, and the empire they'd built together. And Mara Cole Moretti, who'd once been a frightened waitress trying to protect her friend, stood beside her husband as his equal, ready to face whatever came next. Not trapped, not corrupted, not lost, but finally, impossibly, in control of her own destiny. Together, they'd turned a single desperate moment into a lifetime of power and purpose. Together, they'd proven that even in the darkest places, two people could find something worth fighting for. And together, they'd continue building their impossible empire, where love and violence coexisted, where strategy tempered brutality, where power served something beyond mere domination. It wasn't the life Mara had imagined for herself. It was better. Darker, yes. More complicated, absolutely. But also more meaningful, more powerful, more completely and entirely hers. She'd slapped the devil, and he'd smiled. Now they ruled the darkness together, and that was exactly where she chose to be.